Hi everyone, Tony Monaco here, and I wanted to give you a little explanation about this mysterious thing called the 251. It's amazing how many students that I teach that have a lot of experience playing, but kind of like freeze when I mention the word 251, as if it was some sort of mystery. And I understand from my early days how those things would kind of like scare me because I didn't understand. So let me make it real easy for you to understand what a 251 is. We call it a turnaround. In other words, it brings us back, turns us around, and brings us back to the same place. So a turnaround is that exactly that. It turns us back around and sets us up, go around again, right? And so a 251, those numbers represent positions of a scale, okay? And you'll notice that I wrote it two ways. One was with numbers, 251. It's easy for us to understand that. But then I wrote it in Roman numerals as it represents chords uppercase and lowercase. Check that out. You'll see that the 2 is two small i's. That means must be maybe minor, okay? But the 5, the Roman numeral 5 with that little special number 7, capital, that means major. And the 1, of course, major. So we're looking at a 251 in a major key. And we're going to look at the major key of C, okay? So let's just put numbers to the notes. C, 1. D, 2. 2, 5, 1. Okay, so D must have something to do with it because that's number 2. E, that's a 3. F, that's a 4. There we go. There's the 5th one, 5. And just, 5, 1. 5, 1. Okay, so that's the 5. 6, 7, 8. Each number or each note in that scale can make a chord, okay? And if we're going to look at a chord as like kind of putting a space of a major third or minor third, if we're in C major, there are no flats or sharps, right? So everything's always going to be the natural notes, okay? So here we go. If we're going to say 1, let's make a chord out of it. There it is. It's a C major 7. Okay, notice that the capital I at the end of the 1, the 251, major, sure is, right? C major. All right, let's go to the second note, the 2, and notice I wrote down a small Roman numeral for the number 2, meaning maybe minor, okay? Well, let's do it. We can't use flats or sharps. Let's use that major or minor third in between each note. There's D minor 7. So the 2 chord in the key of C major is D minor 7. And that's why in the Roman numerals we represent it that way, okay? So no mystery so far, right? Let's go right up to that 5 one, and let's play that the same way. Let's just kind of use those minor or major thirds. Remember, no flats or sharps because we're in the key of C. Wow, that makes a major chord. Notice the V was capital, and it's kind of special. It's got a dominant 7, a flatted 7 some people call it. I like to just call it a dominant 7. Because it's a natural part of C major. So it's not flatted at all. It's just a dominant 7. It's called the 5 chord. So in the 251, we hear a turnaround, and I'm going to play them from their root positions. There's the 2, there's my D minor 7, there's my G7, there's my C major 7. Now that way it doesn't necessarily sound real although it all sounds real good, it doesn't sound smooth. So we use a law called common tones, and that means when we play a chord, we don't necessarily need to move fingers when we're going to move to the next chord that are already in that next chord. And when we play the organ, we really have to take advantage of that law because we're usually playing bass with our left hand. So for this demonstration now, so that we could hear a little bit of the foundation, I'm going to put my left hand down here and play the notes of those chords. The 2, that's D. The 5, that's G. And C, right? That's the 1. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and just put the D minor 7 in a root position. We call positions root, first inversion, second inversion, and they have as many inversions depending on how many notes are in the chord, right? So this would be a D minor 7 root position, correct? Because the D, the root, is on the bottom. If I move that to the top, then we would call this the first inversion. Okay, so we'll talk about that later in inversions and arpeggios and things like that. But right now, let's put the D minor back in a root position, and let's use the law of common tones to move our next chord, which is supposed to be a 5 chord, right? The G7. What in G7 is the same? Well, it's going to be these 2 notes, and you can look at that closer later when you're practicing, because when you transpose this to different keys, actually these movements don't change. They just change according to the incidentals, but the actual movements don't change at all. So check this out. If I'm going to play D minor 7, that's the 2. Now, if I'm going to go to G7, I just have to move the 2 top fingers. Check this out. The top finger only moves down a half step, but my 4th finger here is going to move a whole step. So that's the movement that never changes, and no matter key, whatever key you're in, the top is always going to move down a half, and this one's always going to move down a whole step if we're going to stay in the diatonic key and play G7. Okay? There it is. D minor 2, G7, 5. Now guess what? These 2 bottom fingers get to move. And that's the 1. We say it's resolved. So a 2-5-1 is a turnaround to take you home to the tonic, which is the 1, the key of C in this case. 2, 5, 1. Take me home. Take me home. Get used to that kind of sound. That is the progression that we all want to learn and master. It is how that progression is handled that makes how every artist sounds. It's the way they interpret this. But for today, let's just interpret it as the good old 2-5-1. Have fun. Try to transpose it in different keys. Remember how those fingers moved. Hey, real quickly, let's see how that last one moved, because we didn't look at that one. So when we went from the 2 to the 5, remember we moved the top finger down a half step, this finger down a whole step. Now to get to the 1, we move the thumb down a whole step, and this second finger down a half. All right, talk to you soon. Thank you for watching.